Welcome to the Shyamcast. This is Brett.
This is Shyam.
Thanks for being here with us. All right, Shyam, we just talked about verse 2.41
Mm.
of Bhagavad Gita.
Mhm.
I'll read it here to get us kind of started.
Mhm.
Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. O beloved child of the Kurus, the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many branched.
Mhm.
And so we talked a lot about what it is to be many branched, with the mind, with the intelligence going off different directions and also what it means to be singular in purpose. You
Mhm.
talked about different things like, even like, the idea of religion itself. There's really truly only one. If there's only one
Mhm.
God, everyone's trying to get to that one God. There are many different means
Mhm.
to do so,
Mhm.
but there's
Yes.
really only one. You gave that
Mhm.
example of speaking to the Catholic priest who also
Mhm.
chants on beads.
Mhm.
Um, And really, I guess that singular purpose that we discussed is love in a word, right?
Mhm.
Um, Trying to realize God's love that is within us,
Mhm.
right? Kind of uncover that.
Mhm.
Um, and so where we are now, it's really starting with the next verse and the next several verses of chapter 2
Mhm.
is Krishna kind of starts to explain to Arjuna where he's going wrong.
Mhm.
He gives him this line resolute in purpose, single in aim. That's what,
Mhm.
the sages who follow this path do. You're
Mhm.
kind of getting off the track a little bit, you know. Um, and so he mentions the Vedas
Mhm.
in this next verse, and he tells Arjuna basically he uses the word flowery, or at least that's
Mhm.
in the translation. You're being distracted by the flowery words of the Vedas,
Mhm.
and you're sort of forgetting what the this singular aim is that you should be
Mhm.
focusing on.
Mhm.
So I was wondering at first if you can maybe just talk about the Vedas.
Mhm.
Um, I know a lot of us have probably heard, at least maybe heard that word, the
Mhm.
Vedas, and there's some sort of connection like to
Mhm.
ancient India as far as that goes. But um, there's many, I guess, texts that may potentially fall under that category, that broad
Mhm.
category of the Vedas.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
could you explain a little bit about what they are? What is Krishna referring to here? And then
Mhm.
why is the language flowery? What does that mean? And
Mhm.
where is
Mhm.
Arjuna sort of going wrong or misinterpreting?
Mhm. Mhm. So, Prabhu, the Vedas is a very vast topic. Whatever one needs in life, there is a way that Vedas can help us to acquire that. People already have desires. And if people want to fulfill any desires, then the Vedas tell them how they can fulfill those desires. And like flowers are very attractive. So flowery words is like anybody reads them and they will have like four eyes and 8 ears and they're like, wow, this is amazing. This is what I want. They're like flowery words of the Vedas, very attractive. So it is described that the Vedas have three sections. One is called the Karma Kanda section. Karma Kanda section describes which particular personality and how to perform some sacrifices and what to do in order to fulfill our desires. They are called Karma Kanda. Means what karma, what activity, what sacrifice to perform to get what we want. That's Karma Kanda section. Then Jnana Kanda section is mm, how to become free from everything. Like people who want everything in this world, they try. And then they realize I'm not happy even though I get everything I want. And then they feel like just being in this world is the source of unhappiness. And that's why some people develop that desire that I just want to leave everything and give up this place. Because initially they think there is happiness. And then they try everything and the Vedas tell them how to get what you want, and they keep running, and after trying everything they want, they feel like I'm still unsatisfied, and everything is giving me a cause of misery. So then they come to the point that I don't want to do anything with this world. And then there is another section of the Vedas called Jnana Kanda section, where they realize that we are spiritual by nature and how we can become liberated from all this material conditioning. So that is, but then still the cause of liberation, that the reason they want liberation is because they are unhappy. It is still, I can be happy if I am liberated. There is no God into picture. It's just that God is some impersonal form and God is some energy, and maybe I can just go there and there I'll be at peace. Like, okay, I'm not happy in this place, so let me change my location where there are no such problems that is there now. And in that location, I'll be happy. So still I am the center. So that's a karma kanda, means how can I get what I want here? And jnana kanda means how can I get out of this place so I'm more at peace and I have nothing to do with this. So that's jnana kanda section, and both are flowery to certain kind of people. And then the third is upasana kanda. Upasana means bhakti or loving devotion of um, how to realize our true nature and how to come out of this perspective of I am the center, I am the enjoyer, to how to please the Lord and how to serve the Lord, and how then both karma and gyan, everything can be used in the service of the Lord, and everything is done. Like again, it connects to singular purpose. Then they have, because I am not in the center, everything for the Lord, whatever one does. So that whole concept of I am the enjoyer or I am the sufferer goes away. And that's what Krishna tells Arjuna, don't be. Previously, he says, fight without gain or loss, happiness or distress. So that's like singular purpose of rendering devotional service. Like what will please me from that perspective. Most of the people, most means almost everyone, get lost in the first two sections, and they sound to cater to oneself, and that's why it looks flowery. So Krishna says, don't worry about those particular things.
Mm. So they're very attractive, like many
Very
things in the
attractive.
world,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, I guess if you imagine, just, I mean, I guess for me, I'd have to imagine reading the Vedas, reading these texts, and just being like, okay, you want this, do this, right? These are the means by which you can attain kind of just like whatever you want, right?
Mhm, mhm,
And that's, well, that's very appealing. It's very attractive, right? It's
mhm,
like, it's a
mhm,
beautiful flower.
mhm,
Um, and Krishna mentions another thing in this verse. Um, many people are going after these things.
mhm,
Um, I mean, we can relate to it to today just as much, I think. It's like, I mean, everybody's sort of looking to elevate their status,
mhm,
get more wealth.
mhm,
Um, even if there's kind of an understanding that that's not the end goal of life, people are, it's just, we're just sort of trained or conditioned to go after these things.
mhm, mhm,
Um, And, Krishna says that, many people really just sort of think that this is all there is. They live
mhm,
their lives thinking, I'm
mhm,
just going to follow what the Vedas say, try to just accumulate more, become more powerful, because, reach different levels of attainment. And that's just kind of all there is to this life. That's really all I
mhm,
can hope for.
mhm,
And, so he's dispelling that notion, right?
mhm,
But certainly pointing to a fact that's still just as relevant today, I think.
mhm,
There's a lot of confusion. He uses the word bewilderment, or that they
mhm,
are bewildered a couple
mhm,
of times
mhm,
in this section.
mhm,
When you are just very attached to basically gratifying your senses, like
mhm,
always trying to just
mhm,
find pleasure for yourself, like you're saying, put me in the center.
mhm,
It's bewildering to the
mhm,
intelligence, to
mhm,
that capacity in
mhm,
us that is supposed to be the guiding factor of this is, really where I should go. This is the right thing to do. This is what's really gonna, like give the best result,
mhm,
in the end.
mhm,
Um, and we can be that intelligence can be bewildered into thinking that if I do this, which is just giving myself more pleasure or,
mhm,
whatever it is, that's going to be the best result. you know.
mhm,
And
mhm,
then the reality is the end result is we suffer more
Hmm.
ultimately.
Yeah. And regarding section of Vedas, there are
Mhm.
four Vedas.
Okay.
They are called Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sam Veda, Atharva Veda.
Mm.
There are four main Vedas. Actually, they were originally only one. And it is said in the scriptures that they came from the breathing of the Lord. When the Lord breathed, the Vedas emanated. And then they entered into the ear holes of Brahma, the first living entity. So
Mm.
that's how the Vedas were transferred from the Lord to Brahma. And then Brahma gave it to his son, whose name was Narada. Then Narada had a disciple whose name was Vyasa. And Vyasa took that one Veda and divided into four. And then these four names were given by Vyasa, who actually scripted it. If you have heard about Ganesh, he's one of the personality. So
Mhm.
he's the one who helped Vyasa write them down. So they actually scripted it. And then Vyasa saw that people in age of Kali, these were written previously. It was coming down through succession. But when the this age is called the iron age, where people are memory are short. So there, if you transfer the knowledge, they will forget and they will not be able to give it to anybody else. So in order to preserve the knowledge, then they have to be scripted so that everybody can get the same knowledge. So then Vyasa thought people won't be able to understand them. They are very complex. So then he wrote Upanishad. Upanishad are like different sections of small sections of Vedas. Like for example, if you like you heard about Bhagavatam. Yes, we have Bhagavatam.
Mhm.
So then Srila Prabhupada, who is our teacher, who wrote many books. So he took one section of one pastime, say one story from Bhagavatam, and then he called like Ajamil, and then he named a book um, um, of say reincarnation, and then he wrote that section. Then he took some section from say prayers by Kunti. Then he wrote another book, Prayers by Queen Kunti. So in this way, Prabhupada took many different sections of Bhagavatam and gave into small books. So it's because if you give somebody like 18,000 verses and 18 big books, they're like, so. But if you give them something small, they're like, oh, this is very nice. This is very nice. And that way they're associating with Bhagavatam, which is a divine literature. So Vyasa saw these are so many books and he's like, I don't think anybody in this age of Kali will get through them. So he took one small section from say one Atharva Veda and then he made it into this is Chaitanya Upanishad. And then
Okay.
took another section and this is this Upanishad. So in this way, small section or summarizing. So we see there are like Srila Prabhupada wrote more than 80 books,
Mhm.
but they're all coming from the main Bhagavatam or like this base book from Bhagavad Gita, Introduction to Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada made a small book and he called it the summary of Bhagavad Gita. And then from the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada took out a book and he called it Perfection of Yoga. So, and then there is a small fifth canto, there is one small chapter. Then Prabhupada took a book, Teachings of Lord Rishabdev. So, in this way, so many small books came out from this base, vast literature. So, likewise, Vyasadeva summarized and then he wrote almost over 1,000 Upanishads.
Mm.
And then Vyasadeva was still thinking, this is also too much. And I gave them in short summary and different sections. But I must do something to just summarize the entire four Vedas. So to just summarize all the four Vedas in his own words, then he wrote a book called Vedanta. Vedanta. They are also called Vedanta Sutras. So that is like the summary of all the Vedas. So in this way, um, and then he wrote some stories, some real stories, history to summarize the essential teachings of the Vedas. And then he called them into Puranas to explain, like Prabhupada take a principle and explain through the modern word or some real time story so we can understand. They are called Puranas. So in this way, Vyasadeva was really trying hard to make everybody understand. But
Mm,
still, the real main purpose of everything was still getting missed. That is to know Krishna,
mm,
because he's just explaining everything as it is, but the real purpose got missed.
mm. Yeah, thank you, Prodigy. So yeah, I mean, this is it's very complex, right? It's sort of like
It's
this
vast.
I mean, yeah, extremely complex. Like this, it's an ancient tradition that was passed down orally for a very long time. And then as
Yes.
you say at a certain point, it just, it was written.
Mm,
Um and so you take the one Veda, and I
mm.
believe Veda means knowledge, right? In Sanskrit,
Yes,
that's
yes,
like the
yes.
meaning. So it's just like these are the Vedas, this is the knowledge,
Mm, mm,
And what little I know is at least, that there's a very vast scope of knowledge in the
mm,
Vedas that
mm,
goes, it's obviously there's a lot of spiritual knowledge. There's also just a lot of like there's science and math and,
mm,
it's language and art and there's, it's
mm,
just the knowledge of this ancient world is encapsulated in this word called Vedas.
mm,
And
mm,
so yeah, it's very interesting to hear that's like this process if it gets split into these four and then it's like, well, how do I just, sort of as we're as we're talking about like how do I get to the point? Like how
mm,
do I make my aim focused without being
mm,
like distracted by all these things? And so
mm,
the Upanishads get created, the
mm,
Puranas get created.
mm,
The Srimad Bhagavatam, which you've mentioned a couple times today, that is one of the Puranas.
mm.
Um, there's 18 in
There are
all. Is that
18.
correct? 18
18
Puranas.
primary.
Primary. Okay.
Mm. There are
But there's
many.
probably just many.
Yeah, there are many.
Um, but yeah, I guess and then, it's like you're describing, as various teachers come along over
Mm,
time,
mm,
and as sort of society as a whole gets further away from this
mm,
knowledge of the Vedas, this
mm,
tradition,
mm,
um, the basic teachings get sort of condensed into shorter versions,
mm,
to fit with the times, right? Like to
mm,
fit with the day and the
mm,
age that
mm,
that they occur in. So, like, as Srila Prabhupada writes, different and various small books,
mm,
he's just taking a little piece, which
mm,
is a little piece of a little piece of the
mm,
Vedas, but
mm,
it's I guess the main point is really right that he's encapsulating this singular aim, this like
mm,
sole focus into a small little book, right? He's sort of like you
mm,
don't need to read all of the Vedas, I guess is the point, right? It's like you don't need to know all of these things. You have to know what the purpose of them is.
mm. Well, the language he used was very obscure. It was very difficult to understand. Like how the body, how the soul is eternal. And he would write so many different sections just to so many Upanishad how the soul is eternal. And there is something supreme power beyond. So in this way, he used such obscure words that people are people will find it hard time to come to the conclusion. And that's why after writing everything, he was still feeling unsatisfied in his heart. He wrote Vedanta, which is the essence of the Vedas. He was still not satisfied. And then Narada, who was his spiritual master, he came to him and he said, "You have not given a crisp understanding, like the essence, something that deals directly with the goal of life and something that directly glorifies the Lord. Like nail it down. Like something centered around direct devotional service and all the examples, something that concise everything and bring the summary. So if they have this one thing, then they have everything else. So that thing does not exist. And people will find it so hard to get to the essence using your books. And because you have further confused them, that's why you're not satisfied. And then you have written Vedanta, which itself is very obscure. So in order to then based on that inspiration, then Vyasa wrote Bhagavatam. That was the last book he wrote. And there he brought all the pieces from all the Upanishads, Vedantas, Puranas, Upanishads, Vedas, and then directly took the essence of everything and put in one book that this is the essence of everything. And that is Bhagavatam. So one who read Bhagavad Gita, nothing, nowhere else to shop. You get everything there,
Mm,
the essence.
mm. Yeah, because we often like we'll start with Bhagavad Gita
mm,
And then after you read that, sort of have some understanding or have discussed that, you sort of move on to Bhagavatam. It's kind of like a
mm,
natural progression, right, of
mm,
texts.
mm,
And yeah, like the Bhagavad Gita is, I know we've mentioned it's a part of the Mahabharata, a very long story
mm,
and an epic poem.
mm,
Um, and one thing I guess that stands out to me is how these like the one Veda gets split into all these different parts, and the two, I guess, sort of like the two main things that almost keep a lot of it going are
mm,
like the stories, the
mm,
Mahabharata and the Ramayana.
mm,
Um, so Mahabharata being about Krishna and his pastimes with all of his, all of his friends and devotees and family. And then Ramayana is about Lord Ram,
mm,
Sita, Mother Sita, Hanuman, for those who know that story. And, those are like these really ancient stories of India
mm,
that just have been passed along for so long that everybody there still knows and everybody still loves to hear.
mm,
And it's sort of, it's like they carry that main message, right? And then
mm,
Bhagavad Gita is just a tiny little part of Mahabharata. Um,
mm.
but it's called, it's called the heart of the
Baba.
Mahabharata.
Mm,
Um, and so yeah, it's like it carries that. I don't know, I like that message, maybe just because it makes it seem simpler, but it's like if you can just sort of like filter through or
mm,
just, if you get presented with like the main thing,
mm,
um, that's all you really need.
mm,
Um,
mm,
we like the podcast, Wisdom of the Sages
mm,
with, and Raghunath Prabhu, he will often say in that podcast, like, keep the main thing the main thing.
mm,
There's a lot of things to catch your attention that aren't the main thing, but if you just keep the main thing, um, you'll feel good. You'll keep progressing and you'll know that you're progressing because you'll be happy in that, right?
mm, mm.
Um, yeah.
Some little thing about Mahabharata.
Hmm.
It is said that Mahabharata is also for less intelligent people.
Good. That's why I like it.
Now, the reason is Mahabharata also deals with politics, Duryodhan's politics, or how say Draupadi was mistreated by some other unscrupulous people, or deals with many, many subject matters.
Yeah, like
And
drama, right?
a
There's
drama,
drama.
yes. And a lot of part of Mahabharata does not deal directly with Krishna. But the place where the Lord, the divine Krishna, when he directly spoke the message about life, that became like the heart of Mahabharata, because those are one of the few places where Krishna directly spoke. Otherwise, it centers around Krishna, but also Mahabharata does not directly depict the supremacy of Krishna. Some people are trying to say Duryodhana is trying to kill Krishna, or there are so many sections, and Krishna is not properly present there also, because Mahabharata was written from the perspective of how Duryodhana is seeing the situation, how Dhritarashtra is seeing the situation, and then the gambling match, and there are so many things, the 14 years of exile of Pandavas, and it don't directly deal with Krishna. And that's why the section of Mahabharata which directly deals with Krishna is captured in Bhagavatam. So Bhagavatam contains everything from everywhere that directly deals with Krishna and there is not even a tinge of anything else other than pure devotion. Kunti Devi, you go into Bhagavatam. Bhishma Dev, go into Bhagavatam. Parikshit, go to Bhagavatam. Arjun, go to Bhagavatam. Then other, go away. You're not needed. And then, okay, Dhruva, you go. Prahlad, you go. Ambarish, you go.
All the
And
big devotees, all the like, yeah, main devotees.
pure souls, you enter there. Anything else which does not deal directly with pure devotion, go out. And then this one book is like the epitome. That's Bhagavatam.
Hmm. So yeah, that's I guess the reason why like devotees read Bhagavatam every day. Sort of, it's a part
Ah.
of the temples and the ashrams. You have
Mm,
Bhagavatam class every morning,
mm,
right?
mm,
And there's a verse in Bhagavad Gita, Prabhuji, that in this section where Krishna he says. that the Vedas, they deal mainly with the three modes of material nature.
mm, mm, mm,
And so I guess, it's sort of like I'm noticing a little bit of a theme here. It's like a lot of these literatures, they're very vast and you can kind
mm,
of get lost in them,
mm, mm,
and
mm,
he's kind of saying, I guess I'm curious about that then. It's like if why would the Vedas deal mostly with the three modes of material nature? Maybe as a, starting question, like these three modes, ignorance, passion, goodness,
mm,
we move through them up and down that ladder. The Vedas, maybe like they talk about you trying to progress, right? If you're in ignorance, you want to get to passion. If you're in passion, you want to get to goodness. If you're in goodness, you want to keep goodness or keep getting better or maintain
mm.
goodness. But it's always in that realm, right? There's no what we would call transcendental message for most of it, right?
Yeah,
So
one thing
why
is,
why would that be?
one thing that Krishna used the word mainly.
Mm-hmm.
Mainly means, say, 99% is three modes. He does not say only.
Okay, yeah.
So there is some section
Yeah.
which is filtered out by Vyasa in terms of Bhagavatam, which does not deal with the three modes. And in fact, the beginning of second verse of Bhagavatam, Vyasa says, one who reads this will become free from the three modes. Trayan Moolanam means the heat of the three modes one will be liberated from all those things just by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. So he himself says the benediction because completely deals with transcendental. But why others mainly deal with three modes? Because three modes inspires desires, material desires. And the Vedas say, like I mentioned, Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda, the other section, the Veda says how to fulfill your desires, what to do to get to your desires. People in mode of desire want richness, fame, beauty. Okay, Bhagavatam is how to get it. Power. Then similarly, mode of goodness, people have their own desires. Mode of ignorance, people have their own desires. I want to harm somebody, or I want to become, say, very generous, or whatever desires one has, which is centered around oneself. Those are inspired by the three modes, and Vedas tell how to fulfill those desires. So mainly fulfilling material desires. All the three are material desires. This one is good desire, a little bit bad desire, and worse desires. That's all. A good material, but they are all material is there. There are three modes of material nature.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, it's a material nature. Our material nature is inspired by these three ways.
And so I mean, there's maybe a few points to be made there, but I mean, that jumps to me is, we're talking, we're trying to figure out like what is the nature of reality, like what is the nature of God, what
Mm,
what is it, and like it seems maybe a little strange from the outside, like why would the Vedas deal so much with like material world, with our desires, like trying to help us fulfill these desires, it's
mm,
we could ask like, well, aren't we talking about trying to we don't want those desires anymore. Those desires are bewildering, distracting, and one of the main teachings I've received is it's like, God actually wants us to get our desires fulfilled, like whatever it is.
mm,
This is like, like the concept of free will,
mm,
why we are not robots, I guess. Maybe some
mm,
people argue we are robots, but it's like why do we have choice? Like why do we have free will? And
mm,
I mean, we get to fulfill our desires, basically, right? Like
mm,
we get to, if we want things, there's even information here. This is how you
mm,
get it. If this is what you want, this is you can have it.
mm,
Um, there isn't like there's no order. You have to seek the truth. You have to seek God. You have to love
mm,
God. There's no such order in place, right? It's just
mm, mm,
whatever you want is what you get to do. It's what you get to pursue.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and so that it's like it's like this is why we agree with Arjuna, or why I agree with Arjuna, right? Like,
mm,
um, or why I find myself inclined to agree with Arjuna, right?
mm,
Like he's just sort of like, well, look, I'm paying attention to what I'm reading and what I'm being told and what my society is telling me, and like
mm,
I think I'm gonna break rules here if I fight in this battle. I
mm,
think I'm gonna get a bad reaction. I think
mm, mm,
I'm pretty sure that this is all these bad things are gonna happen,
mm,
I'm just trying to follow the rules and like get a better result for myself and
mm,
for my family.
mm,
And that's, I mean, this message of Bhagavad Gita that Krishna's giving him is go beyond that, go
mm,
beyond the dualities, as he says in this section as well, the dualities of good and evil. Um,
mm,
I want to get this right.
mm,
Yeah. Um, well, yeah, actually, he says in verse 45, be free from all dualities and from all anxieties for
mm,
gain and safety,
mm,
and be established in the self.
mm, mm,
Yeah. Could you talk about that a little bit, Prabhuji? So the dualities, be free from dualities. Yep,
mm,
we've discussed a little
mm,
bit, but free from anxieties for gain and for safety, and be
mm,
established in the self.
mm. Again, coming back to the resolute in purpose, single aim. Krishna wants Arjuna to become a pure devotee, do everything for the pleasure of himself, pleasure of Krishna. Fight for the pleasure of Krishna, gain or loss, don't worry about it. Surrender everything that results onto Krishna and keep Krishna the goal of everything. And where Arjuna is distracted by the dualities, what is right, what is wrong, where the joy will come, where misery will come, where pleasure will come, heavenly kingdom will come, where hell will come, or suffering will come. So he's into all these dualities. What is good, what is not good, what is the reaction? As you said, what does the society say? And Krishna wants him to forget the way the society thinks or society makes him think. And Krishna wants him to become pure. Like if you see pure devotees, they do everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Like Alakanta Prabhu comes, everything he relates to Krishna. And all our spiritual masters, Srila Prabhupada, everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Single pointed goal behind everything one does. So Krishna want him to go from where he is to what what the goal is pure love. So there comes the desire for safety, desire for gain, the dualities. So Krishna says, don't worry about those things and be situated in your real self. What is the real self? Real self is part and parcel of Krishna, the spirit soul. And real self has unlimited love for Krishna. Be situated in your true nature. That's what spiritual word is, na? There is material word, spiritual word. Spiritual word, everything centered around Krishna. Material word, everything centered around myself and others. So go to that spiritual consciousness.
What is our part in it, in the spiritual world? Like, what is our you mentioned part and parcel. You use that phrase.
Hmm.
Like, can you talk about that?
Well, part means we come from him. And Krishna mentioned Bhagavad Gita, he's our father. So we are his part and parcel. Means we are not him, we are not Krishna. We are a small part of him, but we are of the same spiritual nature. And the reason we are created is to serve him and have a loving relationship with him. That is our natural state. Distracted state is what people are in this world, centered around oneself. Like Prabhupada gives an example, a hand is meant to serve the body. But if the hand is cut off from the body, then the body also suffers and the hand also suffers. But the hand is satisfied when it is serving the body. So likewise, we are like the hand is like part and parcel of the body. So we are part and parcel of Krishna, and we are in our natural state when we are serving Krishna. Krishna is happy and we are happy. But when we are separated, Krishna also feels the pain, and we also feel the pain, and we are trying to enjoy independent of the body. But then it won't work because the hand is supplied by the body. When the hand want to get energy by itself, the hand just has to serve the body, and the body will supply energy to the hand.
Mm.
But if hand wants to derive pleasure and energy and everything by itself without the body, then the hand will not be successful. It is not natural. So likewise, a living entity not serving Krishna is like the limb cut off from the Lord. And he's trying to find happiness and he never gets what he's looking for. And he doesn't even know how to get what I'm looking for. And that happens by connecting back with Krishna.
Mm. Yeah, well, so if well, trying to get into the philosophy a little bit. You know, a lot of people, a lot of spiritualists will say God is one. They'll use
Mm.
that
Yes.
terminology, right?
Yes.
And so that is what we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Like God is one. You can think of it's like a single body,
Mm.
and all the living entities, like everything is sort of is like a piece or a part of
Mm.
that body.
Mm.
And so, in order for the whole body to, to like to live harmoniously,
Mm.
everything has to be working in harmony.
Mm.
All the pieces have to be healthy and have to, be working right for their whatever their particular purpose is.
Mm.
And you could say that every part of our body, of our like our physical body, or every cell in our body
Mm.
is sort of like serving this greater whole thing,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And there's the teaching of sort of separateness, uh, but unity, or unity and separateness simultaneously, I suppose.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, I didn't
correct me
understand.
if I'm,
Yeah. Say again about unity and I can you explain that again? What do
yeah.
you
So, I guess this is pertaining to who our identity, right?
mean?
As it's taught, like who we are
Mm.
and how Krishna says be established in the self.
Mm.
And so, it's like he's telling Arjuna, you're a part of the divine,
Mm.
and you have this purpose, like, and it's serving the whole divine being, right? Like the
Mm.
whole thing.
Mm.
So you are simultaneously a part of God,
Mm.
but you aren't the whole thing. I guess
Mm.
that's sort of what I'm
Yes.
saying, right? It's like
Yes.
unity, right? But
Mm.
not, but still separateness in this sense
Mm.
where it's like you're
Mm.
not the whole thing. You're a
Mm.
part of the
Mm.
whole thing,
The whole thing.
right?
Wonderful. There is an example of a ocean, drop of ocean water and an ocean. So ocean like Krishna and we are like a drop. So we are of the same constitutional nature, like we both are salty by nature like that. But then ocean is infinite and we are infinitesimal. Another example given is a cloud, a small piece of the cloud and the whole group of clouds. The whole group of, when a small piece is connected to a group of cloud, it's like we are effective. But when a cloud goes away, then the cloud by itself cannot do much, but the whole cloud can do. Or a small piece cannot become the whole.
Mm. So, Arjuna needs to understand what his duty is, what his responsibility is, right?
And he is far from that right now. I
Mhm.
mean, he is a pure devotee himself, but by Krishna's bewildering potency, he is acting in this way so that Gita can be spoken. So he's bewildered to think in a particular perspective, and Krishna is slowly guiding him towards the eternal truth.
Mm. And so it's really a lot simpler than he's making it, right?
Yes,
Where
yes.
he's as Krishna says bewildered by all this language in
Yeah.
the Vedas and all these rules and all of these
Society and my
prescriptions. Yeah.
and where my happiness is and where my suffering is, and everything is centered about oneself and society and scriptures. And he's like, yeah, all over
Mm.
the place.
Yeah, and so in verse 2.48, when
Mm.
he tells Arjuna to abandon all attachment to success or failure. Just, forget about that stuff. And he says
Mm.
such equanimity is called yoga.
Mm.
So I think, one of the points, or at the very least, like if you ask, well, how can I tell if I'm acting as a part of this whole, like how can I, if I'm acting in harmony,
Mm.
you feel it, right? He's
Mm.
telling him, like, you will achieve that equanimity that we call
mm,
yoga when you
mm,
find this correct position, like you sort
mm,
of stop all those worries, all those
mm,
anxieties
mm,
for gain,
mm, mm,
for safety.
Now,
And yeah,
very interesting, very deep verse also. Like if somebody take this verse in separate, like just one verse from Gita and try to conclude everything from one verse, then they will think, what is yoga? Yoga means happiness, distress be the same, and now you are a yogi. But then it's like it's not understanding the spirit of Gita. It's more of taking a verse and thinking that so Bhagavad Gita now everything has to be taken with the perspective of entire Gita. So how does this verse works? There is a small story, and
yeah,
see if
please
I'm just a
share.
very deep story. Um, Krishna had a headache one time, 5,000 years back when he was there on this planet. Krishna asked Narada, who was a great devotee, Narada, I'm having a headache. Narada said, my lord, you are everything comes from you. Now uh, the Ayurveda comes from you, the medicine comes from you, everything comes from you. If you have a headache, what do we do? How do we resolve it? Then Krishna says, well, if my devotee gives me the dust from their feet and I put it on my head, little difficult to understand. Try your best. If the devotee give me the dust from their feet and put it on my head, then my sickness will be cured. My headache will go away. So Narada, can you give dust from your feet? Narada said, ah, my lord, I can never do this. For this, I don't know what all miseries I have to go in life by putting the dust on your feet is like putting my feet on your head. So this is quite disrespectful. So I can't do this. Then Krishna says, can you find somebody who can do that? Because I'm really in lot of pain, Narada. I need some help. So Krishna went to the queens, his wives, queens in Dwarka, and they said, he is my lord. How can we give our dust of our feet to him? No, 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 we can't do that. For this, we have to go through unlimited suffering. Then Narada went to Srimati Radharani, who is the eternal consort of Lord Krishna, and the other gopis. And he asked them, Krishna is having a headache. Can you give the dust? Then they said, yeah, take it. So Narada said, are you literate? Do you know what is going to happen if it's like putting your feet on his head? Then they said, if it doesn't matter what happened to us, even if we have to go through a lot of suffering, we are okay with that. If it relieves Krishna from his headache, if our life, even at the cost of our misery, can bring Krishna some happiness, we are happy to go through that suffering forever. And Narada understood that, okay, they are actually yogis. So they are everybody, even Narada and others were also thinking about where my happiness is and where my suffering is. Like, what is the reaction? But Srimati Radharani was not thinking. She's only thinking about Krishna's pleasure. What pleases Krishna? So Krishna says, success and failure, happiness and distress. One who is free from all these thoughts about oneself, then he is actually connected to me. Because underlying principle is because he's doing everything for my pleasure, not for himself or herself. Everything for my pleasure. So such equanimity is called yoga. So it's a very deep verse because we can see it from the true spirit of Bhagavad Gita of pure devotion of what Krishna says. But Krishna is everything Krishna speaks is fully the one same thing. Like it is said that every verse of Gita is pure devotion. Every verse of Gita can be understood is pointing to and understood from that perspective, and that Krishna explicitly mentioned towards the end of Gita. And that's how Prabhupada explained everything with the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. But if you take one verse in abstract, and then one may think, yeah, happiness came and I'm okay, and distress came and I'm okay, so I have become a yogi. But real yoga means connected with the Lord, connection, unity, uniting with the Supreme.
Thank you, Proji. Um, yeah, there are several verses around this as well that do point more specifically to devotion, to devotional
Uh,
service as being, I mean, of like of what the point is,
mm,
it's going back to what we talked about last time. It's like the one word answer is love, right? Like that's
mm,
what we're going for.
mm, mm,
Um, and I suppose, it's I guess, part of this message is like we do some work, Krishna says in this chapter that basically none of this work it never goes away. You
mm,
make an attempt, you make a sincere attempt on this path,
mm,
you don't lose it,
mm,
right?
mm,
Um, even if it's, you don't, maybe you don't have this like very highest goal of devotion um, or maybe you don't feel like you can do that yet, right?
mm,
Um, but it's a very uplifting verse, right? It's just like
mm.
no amount of effort ever goes away, and it
In
can
devotion.
save you. Or sorry, what's that, Proji?
Yeah, any progress in spiritual path is an eternal credit to ourselves. It's never a waste of time or um, um, that benefit can never be taken away from us. Keeps adding from
Mm-hmm.
the past.
And so basically, we get closer to that devotion, that
Mm,
devotional service, and that love, right?
mm,
Um, yeah, I guess because I mean, it's really, this message is that like that is what your nature is.
mm,
If you sort of take away all those layers of conditioning and all these anxieties and everything, that's really what you're left with, right? That's like what your nature
mm,
is, right? You're
mm,
like a part of this body, and you love this, you love being a part of it, right? I mean,
mm,
it's like we all we all like being in harmony with other people. We like
mm,
feeling like we're on the same page, as we would say, or like
mm,
that we understand that that's an inherent good thing. It naturally just feels like the right thing, what we
mm,
enjoy, what really gives us pleasure. And I guess sort of the little mental jump you have to make, or one of
mm,
them,
mm,
is that, I just can't be focused on my own pleasure. I
mm,
like I have to think about this collective. I have to think about this whole thing.
mm,
And if I can focus on that, say it's even just a group of friends, like I just want to make sure that like this group of friends that like we're getting along, things are going well. I want to like contribute, I want to serve in whatever way I can to make sure that like this collective
mm,
has the best happiest possible time together, and
mm,
just
mm,
you're not focused on yourself, right? But
mm,
inevitably, if you really focus on that, you become a lot happier than if you were
mm,
just thinking about I want to be happy, right?
mm,
And I
mm,
guess that's just like that message in just kind of like a microcosm.
mm, mm, mm. I was thinking maybe this is the last verse we can discuss for today. I
Hmm.
mean, the one which you said, it's very nice.
Yeah.
Like Prabhupada gives an example, any advancement in this material world is lost at the time of death. How
Material
much?
advancement.
Yes, is lost at the time of death. How much money we accumulate, taken away. How much studies we went through, PhD and postdoc, and how many research papers we file, everything is taken away. But the spiritual advancement, 1% we make, it is gonna continue to the next life. So it's the only eternal benefit to the living entity. Everything else, we may want to make the life comfortable here, but no matter what we do, it's taken away. It's not an eternal credit to the living entity.
Mm.
And then when Krishna says it can, little advancement can save one from the greatest type of fear. And that is mentioned, the greatest type of fear is gliding down in lower species of life. In the
Mm.
Vedic tradition, it is mentioned, of course, we believe in reincarnation in the Vedic tradition. And then there are 8.4 million species of life. Some are animal form, aquatic form, bird form, trees form. So it is said that getting a human form of life is very rare. And if one goes down to a lower species, then that there is a whole cycle of evolution of how one get come back to the human form of life, and it takes a long time, very long time to come back. So that fear of gliding down is a biggest fear, and which also mentions that one who takes even little advancement on this path will continue in the human birth in the next life, most likely, and then he will continue from there. His investment is eternal. The only reason one may glide down, like there is one story of a king. He uh, um, went to the forest to worship the Lord and do serious worship to the Lord, and then he became attached to a deer. And then while dying, he was thinking of a deer. So there is also another verse in Gita that says, "Whatever we remember at the time of death decides our next birth." We'll discuss that in sixth chapter when we come there. So just because it is related, that's why I'm sharing. So he took a form of a deer in the next birth. But his body of a deer was as good as a human form. Because it is said that only in human form one has the prerogativeness to understand the goal, understand the divine, and render devotional service unto him. Bhakti. That only human form of life can have that prerogative. The animal form of life is more like driven by the senses and instincts, basically. But in the form of a deer also, he has that human consciousness. So whatever Krishna says will become true. So Krishna says, whatever you remember at time of death, but then it will save you from greatest fear. That also did not go wrong. So he took a deer form with a human consciousness, and he would listen to glories of the Lord through the saints, perform austerities. And then he came back again in a human form. He didn't have to glide down and go through natural evolution. And then when he came back, he remembered his past two births. And he knew now his king, he was a great king, taken away from him in the form of a deer. And whatever advancement he has, or great birth, great heritage, or everything is taken away. All that remain in a deer form is how much spiritual progress he made in the previous life. Every investment else that he has done as a king was taken away from him, and that only saved him. And then when he took the third birth, which was as a Brahman, as a spiritual person, his name was Jad Bharat. So he was carrying the king at that time. His name was Rahugana. So this Brahman who was king and deer in the third birth as a Brahman, he was carrying a king. So he was being very careful not to step on an ant when he was carrying a king on palanquin. So the king became, but it was not a very comfortable ride. So king said, "You fool, isn't your body stout? Or don't you know who I am? I am the king and you are my servant. And don't you know how to serve the master?" So Jad Bharat, he would never speak, but he thought this king is a spiritual person. I must enlighten him. So king said, when you say the body is stout or not stout, that's true because um, I am neither stout nor I am thin, because I am a spirit soul. None of these are my actual identity. And when you say you are the king and I am the servant, it is a temporary designation. In the next birth, the roles may change. So here, Rahugana, the king, that time he thought, because he was the king and now he's just ordinary man. And before that, he was just a deer. So everything is lost. But only the progress is continuing from eternally. In this life, it's gonna be with you, and next life, wherever you go, that will be eternal. Like Prabhupada will say, we are eternal, the Lord is eternal, the investment in that relationship is eternal. But that's why bhakti is eternal. But anything else is temporary because it's gonna go away. But this investment is the real investment. Or we give a presentation, the real investment of time, or the best investment of time, because the return is maximum. People make investment based on what I'm gonna get back from there. And when they invest on bhakti, it's a real investment. So really saver. So really like there's a lot of return on that investment. Like real solid return is there. Like you are thinking about the future also, what you're gonna get back from there. So that is never lost, and it saves one from the greatest type of fear, danger. And the third life, then he was very happy and satisfied, and the king was so miserable. But by the mercy of this devotee, he became self-realized also. It's very beautiful verse. I thought, let's discuss a little bit more on this verse.
Yeah. I noticed that he was not afraid to speak that way to the king.
Uh,
You know,
Amazing.
it's like speaking, you're carrying the king around and
Uh, uh,
moving him all around, trying to avoid walking on ants. And you know, as he's chastising you, you like
uh,
say, "You're a spirit soul. You're not actually the king. Maybe I'll be the king next time."
that's
Yeah.
quality. Amazing. You picked very nice point.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing that jumps to my mind as you were speaking, Prabhuji, is the fearlessness and
Mm,
um
mm,
the earlier story you told about the gopis, you know, they were the only ones who were truly fearless of
um,
any potential
anything.
pain, any and yeah,
Uh,
anything that might come their way, right?
uh,
If they really did, you know, like serve their real purpose.
uh,
And so yeah, I guess maybe that's a good place anyway to end it, you know, where like one of the results is
yeah,
of following this path is that fear goes away bit by bit.
wonderful. All right. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.